We were taught that God caused it to rain for 40 days and 40 nights, but the holy tablets tell you otherwise. In chapter 2, tablet 4, we're shown that the flood was not a sudden act of anger, nor a random punishment. The earth itself is described as a living entity, a self-regulating organism called Gaia, existing within the all. According to the tablets, the earth moves in rhythms, cycles known as epochs. Every 50,000 years, magnetic instability increases, the axis begins to shift, and the planet prepares to correct itself. What follows is not simply rain, it is planetary reset. In verses 206 through 208, we learn that this event was known in advance. Enqi understood the coming epoch. He understood the axis reversal. And knowing what was coming, he chose preservation over destruction, saving life not through an ark, but through a craft. Not through animals gathered 2 by 2, but through genetic preservation. This reframes the flood entirely. The rain was not the cause. The epoch was. Now let's read the Holy Tablets, chapter 2, tablet 4. Tablet 4, Adam, a slave made to order, 1910 equals 190. Lo, my child, you ask, why did we fashion you to be slaves? Why are you a slave made to order? First, know that all of you are Adama of the ground. Second, know that we created you, the Adam, for the purpose of helping your species. After the crash of your planet, your species were becoming extinct. So we had recounseled, and we said amongst ourselves without the permission of Anu, let us make Adamites in our very own image, being in our likeness in all ways, being able to reproduce on their own. For however, all did not go well with this plan. 5. The Anunnaki, Aluhum of the mines were complaining that their jobs in the mines were too hard, so they decided amongst themselves without the permission of Anu, the Most High, to create you for the purpose of doing their work. This was the Adama project. 6. There was no Adam to till the land. 7. These are two important and unsettling hints to who had created humans and why. 8. You must know the truth, and it shall make you free. 9. This truth is that the back-breaking work in the gold mines in Rafali had become unbearable. 10. Enlil, their commander-in-chief, summoned the ruler of Nibiru, his father Anu, to an assembly of the great Anunnaki and demanded harsh punishment of his rebellious crew. 12. But Anu was more overstanding. What are we accusing them of? He asked as he heard the complaints of the mutineers. Their work was heavy, and their distress was much. 15. Was there no other way to obtain the gold? He wondered out loud. Yes, said his other son Enqi, Enlil's half-brother and rival, the brilliant chief scientist of the Anunnaki. I saw that it was possible to relieve the Anunnaki of the unbearable toil by having someone else take over the difficult work. And I resolved to let a primitive worker be created. The idea appealed to the assembled Anunnaki. The more they discussed it, the more clear their clamor grew for such a primitive worker. 21 and Adamu to take over the workload. But they wondered, how can you create a being intelligent enough to use tools and to follow orders? How was the creation or bringing forth of the primitive worker to be achieved? 24. Indeed, a feasible undertaking? Enqi answered, saying, 25. The creature whose name you uttered, it exists! 26. All you have to do, he added, is to bind upon it the image of the Anunnaki. 27. The Anunnaki did not create humans from nothing. 28. The being was already there, on Gaia, Earth, the product of evolution, Homo erectus. 29. All that was needed to upgrade it to the required level of ability was intelligence, is Nafish Kaim, divine life. 30. To bind upon it the image of the Anunnaki, the image of the Aluhum themselves. 31. The process envisioned by Enqi was to bind upon the existing creature the image, the inner genetic makeup of the Anunnaki. 32. He wanted to take the Homo erectus monkey and breed it with the DNA of the Anunnaki, gods. This first endeavor was undertaken without the permission or approval of the Most High, Alyun Alyun El Anu, because that would be interfering with the ecology of the planet Earth, the chain of life, evolution, and mutation, where each living thing plays its part in keeping the environment balanced. Every living thing on and in the planet Earth and its seas are one, depending on each other for existence. To pull out just one form of life and alter the system by upgrading or downgrading would throw everything off. Stepping into the chain of events, Selecting one breed of creatures from the rest would disrupt the natural system of things. This Anu knew. 33. Yet, the assembly of all the Anunnaki resolved amongst themselves to proceed with the project. Enlil stated that these Lulus were to be created asexual, or hermaphrodites. However, Enqi disagreed. He felt that the Lulus should be given total control of their reproductive organs, so that they can reproduce on their own. This is what Anu didn't approve of. Anu was against unruly activity, uncontrolled sex. Enki took his thoughts to the Anunnaki Ninti, whereupon she also agreed to breed the Lulus with their own reproductive organs so that they wouldn't have to keep cloning and engineering. They proceeded on with their project without informing Anu. This they did without the permission of Anu. 34. Enki assigned the task to Ninti, their chief medical officer, who was under the impression that Anu had approved this project. 35. They summoned and asked Ninti, the midwife of the Anunnaki, the wise birth giver, saying 36. To a creature give life, create workers. Create a primitive worker, that he may bear the yoke. 38. This process took place in the laboratory Shimti, meaning house where the wind of life is breathed in. After the purifying and extracting procedures were completed, 40 Anunnaki Aluhum, who purifies the Nepishtu, Enqi, spoke up. Seated before her Ninti, he was prompting her. After she had recited her affirmation, she put her hand to the clay. 43. The mixing of the clay with all the component extracts and essences was not yet the end of the procedure. 44. The egg of the Alpi woman was fertilized in the purifying baths with the sperm and genes of the 7 young Anunnaki, Aluhum, was then deposited in a mold where the binding was to be completed. 45. Enki announced to the gathered Anunnaki that his own spouse, Ninki, Lady of the Earth, had volunteered for the task. 46. Ninki, my spouse, he announced, will be the one for labor. 40. She was to be the one to determine the fate of the new being. 48. The newborn's fate you shall pronounce. Ninki would fix upon it the image of the Anunnaki, and what it will be is Humim. 49. The female Anunnaki chosen to serve as birth Anunnaki if the experiment succeeded. Enqi said, one should stay and observe closely, for in the first 3 months the Nakashians are present, in the second 3 months the Ramardians are present, but in the last 3 months the Aluhum are present. So guard against thievery by the Luciferians, those disagreeable Yawans. Keep a watchful eye over what is happening. 51. The birth Anunnaki were kept together. Ninti sat, counting the months. 52. The fateful 10th was approaching. 53. The 10th month arrived and the period of opening the womb had elapsed. 54. Humim's creation, it appears, was compounded by a late birth. Medical intervention was called for. 55. Realizing what had to be done, Ninti covered her head with an instrument that made it possible through ray beams for her to see an opening. 56. With this done, that which was in the womb came forth. 57. Grabbing the newborn babe, she was overcome with joy. Lifting it up for all to see, she shouted triumphantly, 59. I have created. My hands have made it. The first Adam was brought forth. 60. Now enough mixed clay was prepared to start pregnancies in the 14 birth Anunnaki at a time. 61. Ninti nipped off 14 pieces of clay. 7 she deposited on the right, 7 she deposited on the left. Between them she placed the mold. 62. Now the procedures were genetically engineered to come up with 7 males and 7 females at a time. The wise and learned, or double 7, the birth Anunnaki had assembled. 64. 7 brought forth males, 7 brought forth females. The female Anunnaki brought forth the wind of the breath of life. 65. The creation of the Lulu Amalu, primitive worker, the Homo sapiens, came about through a feat of genetic engineering and embryo implant techniques. This new being had 9 ether hair and was known as the benevolent ones, called the Dunakiel, and they possessed the hydrocephalic state. 66. But were going through a long process of evolution. 67, however, the Anunnaki jumped in and sped up the Adamite's evolutionary process, creating you sooner than you would have evolved on your own. In any case, just as the Anunnaki had done on Nibiru, both coming from the same seed of life. 68. This creation was done by genetic manipulation. 60 was not done in an instant. It took 600 years in the grafting and the making of this being, male called Humin. 70 female called human. They went through a lot of trial and error to get the perfect being, which accounts for all of your defects in this world today. 71. It took them exactly 600 years, that is 400 years for the breeding of 4 generations, as in all cloning and genetic splicing or grafting. That's 10 people per 100 years, and comes out to 40 people over a period of 400 years. 70 to 100 years was used for the preparation of this process, that is, collecting of the choice species for breeding, or what is now called abducting, and the building of the laboratories on the planet Lamu, Mars. 73-400 was used for the actual breeding, with the last 100 years was for civilizing and educating. The transplantation of the Homo erectus was done on the planet Lamu, Mars. 74. The Anunnaki had set up bases on Mars and on the dark side of the moon 450,000 years ago before coming to the planet Earth. The Anunnaki assembled 30-mile-long crafts to transport the minerals that they collected. Homo erectus were being abducted from the planet Earth and then taken to a laboratory called Shimti on the planet Lamu, Mars, where they were being made into Homo sapiens. 75. The laboratory Shimti was originally located in Nibiru. The Anunnaki had been going to Mars long before your existence. Now these bases on Mars have been rekindled by humans and extraterrestrials. 76. For many years, scientists have been denying the fact that life is on the planet Mars, even after evidence was proven. They were in opposition to the idea of a modern Martian civilization that was brought forth in 1877 AD. 77. The face on Mars was an ancient marker for incoming extraterrestrials to know about the project of Homo erectus. Mars was one of the bases used by the Anunnaki for the creation of Homo sapiens. 78. Homo erectus were gathered from Earth and then abducted to Mars for breeding in a laboratory which is called Shimti, meaning the place where the wind of life is breathed. This marker was to make other extraterrestrials aware of this experiment of changing Homo erectus to Homo sapiens. 79. The Anunnaki did this without the permission of Anu, Enlil. They were not supposed to jump in and speed up your evolutionary process. 80. This was the birth of your Zakar, the human, Hu, creative force of will, and Min, the deity of reproduction, called Adam of the red soil, copper tone with the atomic weight of 63.546, and its chemical symbol is Cu, with its atomic number being 2981. It's always in a perfected oxidized state when the electrons of this magnetic earth field dissipates, and the higher form manifests in the color green by the absence of the atmosphere filled with oxygen, with its atomic weight being 15.9994. Oxygen has the atomic number of 8, and its chemical symbol is O. 82. It's a diatomic molecule. It makes up 20.95% of the volume of dry air. Diatomic oxygen is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. When the breath of life is breathed into the being in the form of ruach, a great wind mixed with life of the Elohim and life of the earth, it is the intake of oxygen. 83. The earth life produces ions which are molecules bearing electrical charges, having within it a great number of negative electrons, unequal to the number of positive protons in the nuclei. These negative ions are very helpful and refreshing. There is an abundance in the air after a storm or even near a waterfall. This process of breathing in oxygen transforms the color of the being, manifesting the positive charges through the melanin. There is melanin and neuromelanin, which is a form of melanin found in the peripheral nervous system, which is the central nervous system. 85. The Luciferians, who are the Halabians, Flugelrods, or Hulub, the fathers of one of the albino races, today tries to reduce the importance of melanin, they being of all the creatures on the planet with melanin, the most melanin recessive. Yet controlling propaganda and the media tries to hide the very word melanin. 86. They try to reduce the importance of melanin by overlooking the significant difference between brain melanin and skin melanin properties. 87. Neuromelanin does not run parallel with your skin melanin. Whether white, red, yellow, black, brown, or albino, neuromelanin plays an important role in the functioning of the brain and nervous system. O melaninite children, 88. My child, melanin was a gift to you from your parents, the Anunnaki Aluhum, and the scientists that protect it are called Dunakil. 89. The residents of Shambhala and Agartha, called also the benevolent ones. 90. This gift being the finest of the refined chemicals known to your species. 91. It was given to you, the melaninite children, being that you were procreated as a new being or Nubian. It too dwells in your very essence and in your environment. The melanin that is throughout your body is the same thing that colors this planet Chi, now called Earth. 93. The very thing that colors the bark on trees brown, and the soil of the earth, and everything that live, and the fowl of the air, and the fish of the sea. 94. Know that it does not matter what color your skin appears to be. 95. Know that all genes in all creatures on this very planet Earth known as Gaia, the living organism, have melanin, for all things are coated with melanin. Next, melanin is the most ancient and worldwide pigment in living organisms. 97. It is found in an abundance in the original organisms such as fungi as well as advanced primates. 98. Thus, within each and every living organism, melanin appears in that which aids the human's body and all parts that allow it to function, such as invertebrates. 99. It not only dwells in the skin, eyes, ears, central nervous system, pineal gland, pituitary gland, thyroid gland, and the barotheric gland. It is also found abundantly in the inner parts of the body, including the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys. Chapter 2. El Jarutat, the slaves. Tablet 4. 100. Melanin controls all mental and physical body activities. 101. Melanin is an extremely stable molecule and highly resistant to the digestion by most acids and bases, and is one of the hardest molecules to ever be analyzed. 102. If you doth not purify your melanin molecule that lays within you, you will not heal your body of its ailments. 103. It is vitamin B that keep melanin clean within you. 104. Know that it manifests as pigmentations in the skin. 105. It appears as different shades and hues, colors being black to brown, from red to yellow to white. 106. It is the amino acids tyrosine found on each strain of your DNA that controls the hue or shade of color. 107. Thus there are 6 different types of melanin carrying beings that are known to you. 108. They are of different hues, from very dark brown to the blackest of blacks. 109. They are found in the depths of the land of Nubia, called Africa today, and the land of the frogs called North America. They live near the equator. 110. From the land of Kemet, where the original Nubians, those of the black hue, do dwell. From Cush, the land of the original Ethiopians, those of the greenish hue. 112. From Nigerians, those of the brown hue. 13. From the Bushmen of Zimbabwe, those of the yellow hue. 114. From the Sudanese, those with the copper tone, reddish-brown hue. 115. It is also seen in Moors in America, who mixed with the original Hopi tribes and are the real Native Americans tribes in America, as the ancient Nubians who originally crossed over to Atlan, also called Aslan from the word Utla, meaning vacation, before the division of the continents. 116. As well as mixing with the cursed seed of Canaan, the Caucasians. Thus there are certain climates that change these descendants of the Halibian, Flugelrod in different hues, such as red or brown. Yet they can be easily distinguished from the original Nubians, who range in hues of dark brown, yellow, or red. 17. The wrongly called Negro varies in shades of all of the above, all producing an abundance of melanin in your skin. 118. And in most cases, wrinkling doth not become a factor until the age of 60. This inheritance of melanin is inherited from generation to generation. 120. Again, you have a Caucasian who has blonde hair and blue eyes, descendants from the Hulub Flugelrods. 121. These Hulub Flugelrods are now living in a cavern beneath the Antarctic. They are the fathers of the Nordic race. 122. Not to be confused with the Canaanites, whose leprosy is the result of a curse of albinism cast upon Ham, the father of Canaan, by Utnapishtim, called Noah, after the craft that rested down on the surface of the earth after the waters decreased. 123. The albino seed's name comes from the sea Albion, called the White Island. 124. It is in the land of the Saxons and the Angelicas, called Brit today. 125. These Hulub Flugelrods are originally from the Aldebaran star constellation and the Pleiades. 126. They produce extremely low levels of melanin. 127. What is the importance of this thing called melanin? The pigment melanin is responsible for the color of skin. When melanin does not appear in the skin, it is a deficiency. However, this has nothing to do with the amount in your brain called neuromelanin and the rest of your organs. For instance, albinos, you will still have a certain level of melanin in their heart, arteries, and liver, although they lack it in their skin. 129. This deficiency comes about because of the absence of melanocytes, that which synthesizes the melanin, is deficient, which interferes with the journey of pigment cells to a developing embryo. The deficiency of tyrosine, which is a copper-containing enzyme that works as a catalyst or vehicle that causes the production of melanin and other pigments from tyrosine. 130. These cells called melanocytes are responsible for all the colors of hair, from yellow to black. 131. The tree-like melanocyte cells in the deeper epidermis is what produces this dark brown pigment called melanin. 132. The pigment is introduced into nearby cells through the branch tips of the melanocyte cells in units called melanosomes. 133. Know that hair turns gray when the melanocytes die. There are different textures of hair, 6 ether to 9 ether. 134. Hair can be straight, 6 ether meaning 6-point melanin, wavy, curly, 7 1/2 point melanin, or kinky. 135. 9-point ether, and it's in that kinky or kingly hair that was given to you from your parents, the Anunnaki Elohim. 136. Then there are those beings who are albinos. 137. This genetic disorder, albinism, is a group of genetic disorders affecting 1 out of every several thousand humans and other animals. 138. The first being Canaan himself. His curse was the removal of the divine, which was the reduction of melanin, thus cutting off his family ties with the Elohim. 139. He transformed from a son of the Elohim to a son of Sam. 140. For you that are born an albino, if both your parents are albinos, then you can only be an albino. This is because your parent does not possess any of the dominant genes. 141. Albinism, if carried in the genes of 2 Nubians, will produce an albino offspring, and mixing of your seed depletes your melanin. 142. When the Anunnaki took residence in Arcturus, the original home of the Taros, they mixed their seed with them, who were copper tone in hue, while the Anunnaki were olive green tone in hue. 143. This mixture is why Anunnaki appear copper tone in hue. This mixing took place for 7,000 years. 144. Eating the improper foods or overeating overloads your body as well. Overeating overexerts all of the organs in the body just to digest the food, which is why you shouldn't eat after a certain time, because it keeps the body constantly working when it should be resting. 145. Then your connection is blocked, thus disease manifests. 146. Melanin is deranged only when it becomes toxic, and any individuals who might have toxic melanin will act in a very similar manner, that which is primitive, animalistic, and barbaric. 147. This is why there is a great concentration on drugging the Nubians of the Western world. 148. Melanin has physical properties and personality traits which distinguished it from others. 149. Melanin smells sweet. Your body is dedicated to making melanin, which has 9 substances of its own, as long, and this is as you eat reasonably. 150. Wake my child, for the time is near. 151. Each cell in the human body needs its own oxygen carried by the blood. Human blood is similar to chlorophyll of the plant life. 152. Human blood has 2 main constituents. 153. The cells are corpuscles comprised of 45%, and the liquid portion or plasma in which the cells are suspended comprises 55%. 154. The blood cell comprises 3 main types. 155. Red blood cells or erythrocytes, white blood cells or leukocytes, which in turn are many different types. 156. The third platelets or thrombocytes. Each type of cell has its own individual function in the human body. 157. Plasma. The colorless solution is 90% water. It carries different ions and molecules including proteins, enzymes, hormones, nutrients, and waste materials such as urea, which is a compound of nitrogen waste found in the urine. 158. Fibrinogen is the protein that creates the clot that becomes the congealed blood when the water is removed, dehydrates, and returns to dust. 159. The substance in the red blood cells that is largely responsible for their ability to carry oxygen and carbon dioxide is hemoglobin. 160, the material that gives the cells the red color. 161, it is a protein complex comprising many linked amino acids and occupies almost the entire volume of red blood cells. 162, essential to its structure and functions, is iron. Iron is needed now solely for the magnetism in the blood that keep the involuntary functions of the body working properly. 163, its atomic weight is 55.847. Its chemical symbol is Phe and atomic number is 26. 164, when these two processes of the blood occur simultaneously, the physical part of the being created his skin of the soil of Gaia, the living organism called Earth, whose essence is soil. 165. This Gaia, also spelled Gaia, is in fact a living organism, named after the Greek goddess Ge, or Pangaea, meaning all land, and that one landmass being Earth, where physical and chemical conditions exist on the surface and within the interior. 166. Within the atmosphere and the oceans, one that was made to suit the conditions to exist within the boundless universe. 168. For Gaia is a living entity existing within the all. 169. Gaia has been and always will be prosperous, having favorable conditions. 170. Causing the presence of life itself to be thought of as significant. 171. Any species is of course a key development of this living organism called Gaia. 172. Yet because your existence came along so far after the creation of Gaia, originally called Tiamat. 173. It is inappropriate to question whether life of any species has a significant meaning to why Gaia came about. 174. Know that Gaia is a complex entity involving the Earth's biosphere. It is a self-regulated organism that grows and has climate changes. 176. Gaia is living matter. 177. The air, the oceans, and land surface forms this now complex system which has the capacity to keep it existing. 178. Why call Earth a planet when 3/4 of its surface is sea? That's why when pictures are taken of it from above, it appears to be blue sapphire. 179. Know that water is a part of the mechanism that helps keep the planet running. 180. It transforms the radiant energy from Apsu, the sun, into the motion of air and water, which in turn distributes this energy all over the Gaia. 181. Gaia runs off cybernetics, which is a self-regulating system of communications and control in living organisms and machines. 182. Thus, when the physical part of a being is created, your Jalud, skin, is the soil of Gaia, the living organism called Earth, and your very essence is soil. With their contents begins the process as rusting and manifests itself in a copper tone. 184. When this oxygen is removed, an oxidation begins. The being returns to its original state as the greenest olive. 185. This Adamite being mixed with the abducted black man, called a Hindu, having 6 ether hair mixed, to manifest a child of the Elohim having 7 1/2 ether hair. 187. His mate Nekeba, Eve being unmixed, undiluted, and untampered, possessed the holy gene, the 9 ether, woolly, kingly hair. 1. Yet her skin tone was at the beginning of the melanin process. 189. She was not the yellow seed, not the red, brown, nor black. You were created to be Jarutat, slaves, to work the mines for the Anunnaki. As the Lulus multiplied, the Anunnaki began to copulate with them. The level of sexual interest had gotten a little out of hand, and this made Enlil angry. Enlil never thought that the Lulus should be given the capacity to reproduce without the absolute control of the Anunnaki. 193. The unique characteristics of the Lulu's telepathic abilities added an unknown thrill to the sexual experience. The word got around that the gods were running off into the woods, frolicking and reproducing with the Lulus. 194. In those times, birth was not the painful process that you know today. Birth was easy and a time to be at one with Mother Ninti, the goddess of all life. It was a time to experience union with the cosmos, to bring forth more expressions of Prime Creator, not of pain. 195. The Anunnaki and the Lulus enjoyed being pregnant. Every birth brought more Lulus and more festivals and more fun and beer. The grains that grew on earth developed the most delicious beers, ales, and mead, and alcohol made from fermented honey and water. 196. Enlil became more and more disturbed by the loose copulation of the Anunnaki with the Lulus. He thought that our genetic lineage were being corrupted by such uncontrolled crossbreeding, and he was angry at the proliferation of Lulus. Enlil began to think of ways to cut down on the Lulu population. By this time, there were many social hierarchies among the Lulus. 197. There was great discussion as to who had the most Anunnaki blood, and who was related to which Anunnaki, and how long their lineage was. Enlil became more upset at the thought of the Lulu population overrunning Earth. He wanted to get rid of them. 198. Enlil called a meeting of the family. He demanded that something be done about the Lulus and began to state his views of the matter. 199. His brother Enqi completely disagreed. Enqi complained after all the work he and Ninti had done to create such efficient workers, it was absurd to even consider destroying them. They were needed in the gold mines. The brothers ranted and raved as usual. 200. Enlil's wrath was unchangeable despite his brother's pleas. 201. The sons of Enlil and Enqi joined in the arguing, both sides raging for a time. But in the end, because he is the number one son, Enlil prevailed. His plan would not kill them all, just those unfortunate enough to starve to death, and so the first famine was arranged. 202. As Enqi and his sons left the meeting, they formulated a plan to defeat Enlil. 203. Famine spread across the land, and some food was smuggled to the Lulus, and most survived. Enlil commanded the communications from the space station orbiting Earth, and he was the first to learn of the coming polar shift. High above the planet, the orbiting astronauts began to observe netic fluctuations and the inevitable wobblings. 204. The axis of the planet was about to reverse itself. Enlil kept these observations secret. He determined to wait until the last possible moment so there would be only enough time to transfer the families of Anu and the Anunnaki to the orbiting station. He made certain there could not be sufficient time to rescue the Lulus. 205. The spies of Enqi had informed him of the polar shift every 50,000 years, called an epoch. In all the ancient cultures of Earth there are stories of a flood and one man who was saved in an ark. Enqi chose that man. That was not the first of the floods of Tiamat, that was only one of many. 206. Knowing there would be a great flood, Enqi resolved to save at least one family of Lulus. He picked a man from his own gene pool, and there was no ark. It was a craft, or what you might call a submarine. And the animals, 2 by 2, were actual samples of the genetic material makeup, appropriately stored so they might later be recreated. Defying Enlil, Enqi rescued the Lulus. 207. When Enlil found out about the surviving Lulus, Enlil was angry. He and his sons accused Enqi and his sons. Enlil said that Enqi defied the laws of Anu. 208. Enqi made a great speech where he said, in the greatness of his visionary wisdom, Enlil had been fated to engineer a method of sorting through the rubbish of the species to arrive at the prime genetic material of all the Lulus. And if these lone survivors were deemed to live through the horrors of the deluge, their genes must be worthy of serving Anu and the Nibiruans. 209. Enlil agreed, and each member of the family of Anu then swore a vow to each other. All manner of laws were subsequently made to regulate the copulation and breeding of the Lulus. Tablet 4 is essentially trying to reframe human origins, Earth events, and power structures into one unified story. It's not random topics stitched together. It's one argument told in layers. At its core, Tablet 4 is saying this: humanity did not begin by accident. The Earth does not act randomly, and history, as commonly taught, leaves out the mechanisms behind creation, catastrophe, and survival. First, it explains why humanity was created. Enqi and Enlil are presented as opposing forces, not good versus evil, but control versus compassion. Humanity, the Lulus Adamites, was engineered to solve a labor problem. Yet Enqi insists on giving humans autonomy, intelligence, and the ability to reproduce freely. From the beginning, there is tension over whether humans should be tools or evolving beings. Second, it explains what humans were made from and what makes them distinct. This is where melanin comes in. Melanin is not treated as just skin color, but as a biological, neurological, and spiritual substance tied to intelligence, resilience, and connection to life forces. The tablet is saying that what truly matters is internal, especially neuromelanin, and that external appearance was later misunderstood, politicized, and weaponized. Third, it explains the Earth itself. Tablet 4 makes a radical claim. Earth Gaia is a living, self-regulating organism. Climate, floods, and disasters are not divine tantrums or random chaos. They are responses. The Earth corrects imbalance the way a body does. This idea sets up everything that follows. Fourth, it introduces epochs and polar shifts. The flood was not unique or moralistic, it was cyclical. Every epoch brings instability, magnetic changes, axis wobble, environmental upheaval. Those who understood these rhythms prepared. Those who didn't perished. This reframes history as knowledge-based survival, not blind fate. Finally, it tells the true flood story according to the tablets. There was no simple arc narrative. There was foreknowledge, technology, genetic preservation, secrecy, and conflict among the so-called gods themselves. Enqi saves life not by miracle but by planning, and afterwards survival itself becomes proof of genetic worthiness. If these words from the Holy Tablets chapter 2 are awakening your spirit, restoring right knowledge, or guiding you toward deeper understanding, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to All Eyes on Egypt TV so these teachings can continue to reach those who are seeking truth. Your subscription supports the preservation, study, and reading of the Holy Tablets and related sacred works. This video is powered by AEOE Bookstore, the largest collection of books by Dr. Malika Z. York. To read, study, or listen for yourself, obtain your copy of the Holy Tablets at www.aoebookstore.net.